We're back for another week of pop politics.
And what a week it has been.
Mostly eclipsed by the State of the Union. Did you notice they used the word eclipsed because there was a big, red blood moon or whatever, super blood moon.
That's right.
Blue moon,
You're
whatever.
clever, Brigitte.
There was a moon eclipse last night. The moon's in Logan, Utah that I missed because I was not about to stay up that late.
Yeah, me neither. I saw some of it the other night, so it looked cool.
I heard good things.
Okay. So, diving into pop culture, this first one is, kind of random, but I flagged it because it was just, so, whatever. So, KFC's mascot, or spokesperson, is Colonel Sanders, right?
Right.
And there's, commercials and somebody dressed up. It's, the white costume, the white hat, the mustache, and does he have a beard?
Oh, he gets a goatee.
Goatee, mustache, glasses. Anyways, apparently, Colonel Sanders is now being portrayed by Reba McEntire? The redheaded country, superstar. And I saw that and I was just like, what? She's the first woman to portray Colonel Sanders. And, don't get me wrong, I have no problem with, a woman being her. Whatever, it's fine. But, just that it was Reba was just, what the
this
what?
Doesn't seem to fit
super
your
random.
Persona.
Reba is very, country and very,
right.
She's from Oklahoma. She has a drawl. But they did, this commercial where, Reba was dressed up as Colonel Sanders and was, singing at this restaurant, and then she, throws her hat into the audience, and, Reba catches it and, does, a hat tip
okay.
to Reba as Colonel Sanders, and it's just, okay, then. Anyways, so Reba is now Colonel Sanders in this weird world that we live in. So,
to each their own.
Next time you see a KFC thing, it will probably be Reba McEntire as Colonel Sanders. And that is now where we live.
Alright.
Anyways, moving on. So, Steven Spielberg, it came out recently, is doing a remake of the classic movie musical West Side Story.
Why would you do a remake of West Side Story?
Why do they do a remake of anything these days?
You do that? Why would Spielberg do that, of all people? Isn't it Leonard Bernstein who wrote the music for that?
I
think West Side Story is a Bernstein. That doesn't make... None of this makes sense.
Yeah, why he's doing it, I couldn't tell you, but I just saw that he was. And,
alright.
But, I mean... It's a good story. The music's great.
True. That's very true.
And, honestly, the story of, whites versus, Latinos, and, the divisiveness, and, the tribalism is, totally relevant today. So...
Did they say what kind of remake it's going to be? Are they going to bring it into, 2018? Are they going to do anything like that?
I don't know.
Huh.
Because West Side Story is set in the 50s.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And, I think it would be tragic for them, in my opinion, to do it in a modern sense. Part of what makes it so great is, the period of the 50s and just, the gang. But it's not, guns and, what we think of a gang today. It's, knives and fistfights and,
right.
So...
Well, I mean, West Side Story is already a remake of Romeo and Juliet.
That's true.
So.
And there have been...
Kings today still use guns and fistfights.
What?
That's true.
You mean knives?
Yeah.
Yeah, but, back then, guns weren't really a big thing. Anyways, and you're right. The Romeo and Juliet story has been remade, a ton of times, and, it's been remade in the modern sense, and, in every period, so it wouldn't make sense.
Well, so that's an interesting mix anyway, Spielberg and West Side Story.
Yeah, has Steven Spielberg done a musical before?
Dude, he wrote Into the Woods.
He did?
Oh, Spielberg. I'm thinking of Sondheim. Wow.
Oh, yeah, that's a different Steven.
Different Steven.
Sondheim is also great.
Now I'm better. I was really confused because I thought it was Sondheim, which is why I was on the Leonard Bernstein track. But you're right. Okay, Steven Spielberg.
No.
West Side
Steven
Story.
Spielberg,
Okay,
as in
Spielberg
Jaws,
is the movie
Jurassic
maker.
Park, The
Wow.
Post, Bridge of Spies.
My brain is tired.
Yeah. So like,
Okay, all right,
Lincoln,
I'm on the same track. But
yeah.
still, like that still doesn't quite make sense to me.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's ever done a musical.
Leonard Bernstein did write the music.
That's what I thought, but I don't know if Spielberg has done a musical.
Oh, what? Oh, weird. Okay. So the original movie was released in 1961. It won 10 Oscars, including Best Picture. And it was based on a 1957 Broadway musical that was, get this, written by Arthur Lawrence and Stephen Sondheim.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay,
So we're coming full circle with the
Wow.
Stevens here.
Yeah, we are.
So, okay. So speaking of, this is a great segue. At the Grammys, Ben Platt gave a fabulous performance of the song Somewhere.
He did, yeah, somewhere.
From West Side Story, and oh my goodness, it was so good.
Yeah, it was.
And so a lot of people online were like, hey, Steven, if you're watching, here's like a tryout, here's an audition. And, you know, Ben Platt would be he would be awesome for Tony. Wait, no,
He's
shoot.
a little white for Tony.
Oh, dang it, you're right.
No, Tony is
No,
the
Tony
white guy.
is white, yeah, because it's
Tony's
Maria.
the white guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, it would be perfect.
See?
Ben Platt for Tony.
Yeah.
All the way.
And so, Steven Spielberg, there's your audition tape, and go watch it because it is awesome.
Wow, we're both doing really well.
We
tonight.
are. It's just been one of those weeks.
It really has.
Speaking of the Grammys were on Sunday, which, of course, award the best achievement in recorded music. Some big headlines. Bruno Mars swept all the big categories like song, record, and album of the year, which a lot of people were surprised about, because big heavy hitters like Kendrick Lamar were also nominated. Kesha gave a very powerful performance of her song Praying. And if you know the backstory, she had been suing to get out of a contract from her manager or somebody. Was it her manager?
That sounds right, but I don't
And
remember.
she had accused him of sexual harassment. So there was the whole Free Kesha movement
Right.
a few years ago. So this record that Praying is on was her first album pre or post him, and it was her big coming out and I'm free and I'm strong, and Praying is a really great song anyways, and she gave a very emotional performance. So that was cool.
And then didn't win in her category.
Yeah, and then she didn't win any Grammys. Also, another thing that was interesting, Lorde, as in the New Zealand singer.
Right.
She was nominated for, I think, Album of the Year, but she was not invited to perform. All the other Album of the Year nominees performed, but her.
Really?
Yeah, so a lot of people saw that as a snub. Also,
We see so many
U2.
things as a snub these days, though.
Yeah. But U2 and Sting were on there multiple times, and everyone was like, why do we need them?
They're old news.
Yeah, so it was weird that they brought back all these old
Yeah.
acts that haven't been very relevant lately. So I don't know, but James Corden hosted. Oh, another notable thing was the video of celebrities reading excerpts from Fire and Fury, and the most notable one was Hillary Clinton.
Hillary.
And she read an excerpt about how he liked to go to McDonald's because he feared his food would be poisoned.
Right. And if you got it from McDonald's, it wouldn't be poisoned. But the funny thing about that, James Corden said it was he was auditioning people to write to get for the next year's best spoken word album or something like that. To record Fire and Fury for next year's best spoken word album.
That's funny. A lot of people, of course, got angry that the Grammys had to be political.
Yeah, Nikki Haley.
Nikki
was
Haley,
up in
most
arms about
notably,
it.
was on Twitter about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, can you blame him? I mean, it's James Corden. If you watch his show, he takes swipes at Trump all the time.
He's not as political as some of the other.
He's
posts,
not.
But he is still very political.
He's not afraid to take a swipe.
Right.
I mean, and that's what those late night host comedian guys, like, that's their job. So
Right.
I don't think
Like,
anyone should be surprised.
you have your Jimmy Fallons and a little bit your Jimmy Kimmels where they try to stay out of it as much as possible. But Jimmy Kimmel still wades into it a little
He's
bit.
kind of with, like, all the healthcare stuff.
It's mostly with the healthcare stuff, but he does a really good job of staying out of it. Jimmy Fallon does a really, really good job of staying out of the politics of it. He just kind of makes fun of, like, the aesthetics of the presidency, right? Like, he'll make fun of when somebody, like, messes up a word or something like that. But he's really good about staying out of
And if
politics.
you want someone to go right to the jugular on political stuff, you watch Colbert.
You watch Colbert, and you also watch Seth Meyers. Yeah, both of them, like, critique the policies and talk like that. Actually, Colbert had Rand Paul on this week.
Really?
And that was a fascinating conversation, right? Because Rand Paul is Tea Party, so he's
libertarian.
Or libertarian, that's what he is.
Yeah.
It's Cruz that's Tea Party. So he's like this. He's not. I mean, he's not a Democrat. He's a Republican-ish person. So
Colbert actually has had a lot of interesting people. Like,
yeah.
He's had Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton, and Scaramucci was on his show.
That's right. I forgot he came on.
Like,
I think he had
did
Kellyanne.
Sean Spicer go on too?
Yeah. No. I don't remember.
Did Sean?
I don't trust my memory at this point.
I don't know. Anyways, so you know, we just did like a mini analysis of all the late night hosts.
We did.
That was fun. Okay. Also, one more side note on the Grammys.
Except for Samantha Bee, and we've missed a couple, but yeah.
Yeah. John Oliver. All the major broadcast ones we did. So randomly, and I'm showing Brigitte this picture right now, on Senator Orrin Hatch's Twitter feed, he was at the Grammy Awards, and it's like a picture of him in his suit sitting at the Grammy Awards. It's all like the lights and the flashing, and I'm like, I cannot imagine Orrin Hatch sitting there like watching Kesha and like Kendrick Lamar perform. Like, Orrin Hatch is like, how old is he? 90.
He's in his 80s.
He's in his upper 80s. I'll look it up real quick.
84 or 86?
He's old.
Can't remember. But can you imagine him?
I'm just like, I cannot imagine. Oh, stop. I can't type fast enough. Orrin Hatch, age. I saw that. He's 83. But I'm like, what is he doing? Like, Lady Gaga and Kendrick Lamar, like, these hardcore people. I'm like, I don't know. I don't see Hatch there. But if you did not know this, Orrin Hatch is actually a songwriter. Like, he writes music.
He's written some really interesting songs about Judaism.
But he's also,
and
like,
other things.
trying to push a bill that, like, changes the compensation for, like, songwriters and, like, in the music industry.
Oh.
So that's why he was there. Was trying to, like, he's trying to overhaul, like, the royalty payments for songwriters and, like, make them more.
Oh,
and so, like, he was there to promote his bill about, like, songwriters in the music industry and royalties. But I'm like, okay, but, like, I just don't see Orrin Hatch at the Grammys. I'm sorry.
That is a difficult mental image to get your mind around.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on from the Grammys.
Yes. So the next thing, another movie news that was announced this week. Tom Hanks will be starring as none other than Mr. Rogers.
That's right. Which I think
Mr. Rogers in a new biopic called You Are My Friend.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say on that?
His face looks like him, but I'm not, like, some people are like, do you think that he's old enough to be Mr. Rogers? Like, doesn't matter. He looks like him.
You know, Tom Hanks is one of the greatest actors of our age, and so I have confidence that he can. And let's see how old Tom Hanks is. Tom Hanks is 61. Like, he's not that young.
No, he's not.
And how old was Mr. Rogers during his run?
I have no idea about that either. I just looked up, though, that, oh gosh, what am I thinking? Oh, Mr. Rogers, you know how he used to wear those sweaters? Each of those sweaters was made for him by his mother, from what I was reading something like that, yeah.
Huh.
Which is super sweet. Anyway, but I think that'll be interesting. Mr. Rogers kind of was formative to a lot of people's childhoods.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to have a movie about him, and I think Tom Hanks is a pretty good person
Tom
to play him.
Hanks can tackle it. I mean,
Yep.
I have said this for a while, and I will say this again, especially after seeing the post. The greatest living actors right now are Tom Hanks and Meryl Streep. Like, hands down, they've both won multiple Oscars, multiple nominations. They deserve it, and they are amazing. So, if anyone could be trusted to take on the character of Mr. Rogers, I think Tom Hanks is up for the job.
I think you're right. So, my favorite news of the week, moving on from Tom Hanks.
Yes.
My favorite news of the week was, this week was the premiere of Black Panther, and the pictures from this premiere are gorgeous. So, this cast is mostly African American, well, it's mostly people of darker skin, not necessarily African American. There are a lot of people who are just from Africa, and other places, and they were given the instruction to dress like their royal best, like it was supposed to be. The theme was royalty, and the dresses that came out of it were gorgeous, like African prints and really deep, bold colors and beautiful ways of doing hair. And I mean, it was just gorgeous. We'll link to some pictures. It just was really beautiful. And then, because it was the premiere, we've been getting like the first critics, like the first reviews and the first critiques, and they are rave reviews. And a lot of people, like, this is just really a big moment, because this is the first time that that a superhero is from an African culture, is African American or African. In this case, he's African. He's Wakandan, right? Which is a made up country in Africa. Like, this is the first time that people with darker skin are seeing themselves as a hero. And from what I hear, like, the villain has like motivations that are deeper than the skin, right? And they're it's a deep motivations, and it just, like, this is the first time, and it's a huge deal, and I am so excited to see this movie. A bunch of friends and I are gonna go pretty close to opening, and I am just psyched.
Yeah.
Like, it looks to be so good, and the reason it looks to be so good is because, like, they're showing they're diving into the deepness and richness of culture, I think, beyond what you would expect from a country. Like, usually it's like we kind of pay lip service to minority heroes, and in this case, I don't think Marvel is. I mean, I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know, but I'm so excited for it. And the world premiere pictures are just...
It appears that they're going all in.
Yeah.
And side note, Kendrick Lamar is doing the soundtrack.
Oh, and
and they released the track listing.
Yeah,
this week.
I saw that, but on the trailers, that's what the word I'm looking for. The music is just like half the reason you keep watching, because it grabs you.
So yeah, Kendrick Lamar is like personally overseeing the soundtrack, so it should prove to be very good. Yeah. So we'll see.
All right, moving on to politics.
Oh, let me pull up this.
Yeah,
tweet.
You should pull that up.
So, okay, let me tell you a little story. Literally, like, this morning, I was gonna tweet out, and I was thinking about this. I was like, man, it's been, like, legitimately, like, a full month since Orrin Hatch announced his retirement.
Yeah, it has been.
Like, a full, complete 31 days or whatever. Almost. Tomorrow.
Yeah.
I even scrolled back through Orrin Hatch's Twitter account feed to find the exact date. Like, I did some thorough research, and it was January 2nd that he posted that video on his Twitter feed, right? Yeah. So I was like, man, Mitt Romney has not said anything. Like,
and he had
no
multiple
tweets.
Opportunities.
Yeah, he spoke at major conferences, like, and I saw in one thing rumors he wanted to, like, wait till, like, the whole funeral for President Monson and, like, the new president was chosen and all that to be over with, and that's been over for weeks now. So I was, like, literally gonna tweet out today, like, man, haven't heard anything from Mitt Romney, and it's been a whole month.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I was like, well, I'll wait till tomorrow. But it's, like, been actually, like, a full entire month to the day. And then, I kid you not, like, later today, I see a tweet from Mitt Romney that says, looking forward to making an announcement on February 15th about the Utah Senate race. MittRomney.com. And I was like, okay, yep, I was in the right mind. Here we go.
But I don't understand why you would like.
That's 2 weeks from today.
I know.
Like, why would you announce?
Like, why are you waiting so long? 2, like, why announce you're gonna make an announcement? That's just mean.
Yeah,
that's just a tease. And you have people.
And it's 2 weeks out. Like, if it was like a day or two, I'd be like, okay, that's fine. But that's 2 whole weeks.
But it's 2 weeks, right? And so, Black Panther comes out that weekend, and I'm going with a bunch of political science friends, and we have a group chat. And somebody was in there, and Angela Davis is coming that day too. So Angela Davis, like one of the women she's from, like, I didn't know she was either, but I looked her up, and she's really cool. she was a part of the civil rights movement, and she did she was one of the, like, took part in that, and I can't remember if she was a leader or not. I don't think she was, but she's really cool. She's coming to speak at USU. So we're making, like, an evening out of it. A bunch of us were going to go to that. So one of my friends was like, better not mess with our Angela Davis Black Panther night. Like, okay, I don't think he will, but at the same time, you're right. He better not. So we'll see what happens. It's unlikely that this is going to be more Omni going, psych, I'm not running.
Wait, no, we were talking about this earlier. It's like,
because I think it would be funny.
It would, but, like, that would be so...
I think it would be so funny. I have this announcement coming up on the 15th. I'm not running for Senate, but I bet he is. So I'm sure that we're just going to get, hey, I've filed my papers, because I think that the filing deadline is right around there.
Is it?
I don't remember when it was.
I've heard, but I don't remember.
You've got to start primaries pretty quick here.
Yeah. And so, and I'm sure the second he announces, there'll be, like, website up, like, Twitter accounts, like, I'm sure it's all ready to go. All they have to do is press, like, publish. You know what I mean? Like, it's gotta be all ready to go. Uh-huh. I don't know why, like you said, they're waiting 2 weeks.
I don't know how you can keep together. I don't know how you can keep quiet first of all, he has to file, right? So obviously they haven't done that yet, because you couldn't keep that quiet. That's the county clerk. The county clerk would know. Like,
is it the clerk or is it the state clerk with like the lieutenant governor's office? Since it's a statewide office.
I bet you're right. I bet it's the state clerk. But I mean, you have to. There's no way to keep that secret. But also, how do you keep secret? Like, you're building up a team, because you can't. First of all, Mitt Romney probably can't build a website. Like, I do not think that's in his skill set. Like, I'm being completely honest. I don't think that's in his skill set.
Well, he has people. He's ran.
That's what I'm saying. But you have to build a team. You
have to build. And there have been rumors for weeks that he has been building team and staffing.
So I don't know. We'll see on the 15th. And we'll know what it is no matter what.
We'll see. Is that a Thursday?
It is a Thursday.
Okay. So we'll talk about it in 2 weeks' time. Okay. Moving on. Next item of business. So, you may or may not have heard of a man by the name of Steve Wynn. There's a whole casino building in Las Vegas that has his name very sparkly, like, written on top of it. It's black and sleek. There's also a second one. So he is a Las Vegas casino magnate. He's built lots of casinos. Like, that's his thing. He's a big casino guy.
Which ones does he own? Like,
I'd have to look
up.
Is it
any of the big names?
Well, there's the Wynn. There's one literally with his name on it. That's called the Wynn, and they built a second one called Encore, but he's also, like, been around for a long time.
Right.
You're really putting me on the spot here.
No,
like,
I
don't know.
He's got.
Okay.
He operates the Nugget, the Golden Nugget, Atlantic City, the Mirage, Treasure Island, and
Bellagio.
Bellagio. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's a big Vegas player. Yeah. So he's a big Vegas player, big entertainment.
I don't know who chose his Wikipedia profile picture page, but he looks a little crazy in that picture.
Oh, Bessie. He's a businessman. Yeah. He. According to Google, his net worth is $3.4 billion. Actually, according to Forbes.
Yep.
Very nice. Anyways, he is involved with Trump. He's like a friend of Trump's. and like donated his campaign, I believe. And he most recently was the finance chair at the Republican National Committee. So he was that. Some sexual misconduct allegations came out against him by the Wall Street Journal. They posted a big article, did some in-depth reporting, and talked to like lots of employees of his, and so props to the Wall Street Journal. But he stepped down as the finance chair.
Right. Which
is like big news. Big shuffle within the RNC. He donated to a lot of Republican politicians, and a lot of them are promising to like donate his donations to charity and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of what happened with Harvey Weinstein and the Democratic
Right. There's
side.
another one that the Democrats are doing that with too, but I can't remember who it is right now. Because there was somebody else that donated to a bunch of them, and they were going to donate those donations.
Also, this is a side note, Marco Rubio fired his chief of staff, also for like sexual harassment or misconduct allegations. Huh. Yeah, so that was just like randomly there. So, there you have it. And a lot of people when the Steve Wynn stuff came out are like, we need to see how the RNC and the Republicans respond, because when Harvey Weinstein stuff came out, they pounded the Democrats and said like, this blah blah blah, you need to return that money, and like really criticized the Democratic side. So now a lot of people had eyes on the Republicans to see what would happen with someone of similar stature and money fall under the same thing. And so he did resign, and they are returning money, so they have responded in kind.
Right. Okay, moving on. So late last year, Congress passed a bill that would, I can't remember exactly the details of it, but basically the premise was we need to increase sanctions on Russia because they did interfere with the election and did a whole bunch of other things that are bad.
And Trump begrudgingly signed it.
Right. But now they're saying that the current sanctions are enough. Like the bill itself satisfies the need for it, like the threat and whatever, so they're not placing new sanctions on Russia. But this week I just blanked.
The Treasury Department released a list of like Russian oligarchs and people that they like intended to sanction.
Right.
But it was come to find out that the list was like pretty much ripped from Forbes' list of like the richest people in Russia. Like, they didn't do like the Treasury Department and the administration didn't do like any research. They just plagiarized it from Forbes, and everyone was like, "What?" And then they signaled that they weren't going
to put new sanctions on these people, right? Which is just like,
it's a little it's shady
in connection with everything that's going on with the Russian investigation, and the fact that Mike Pompeo was saying this week in an interview with the BBC that it's like more than likely that Russia is still going to involve itself in this year's elections.
Oh yeah.
Like it just all seems a little bit shady that we would be like, oh, the threat that Congress has passed this bill is enough. Like, we won't put new sanctions on. We're not gonna do anything to deal with that. Because this time last year we were placing, just a little bit earlier, because it was right before Trump came into office. Remember, we were putting sanctions on Russia because of the Obama, one of his last acts was to put sanctions on Russia as a result of the 2016 election fraud and scandals and stuff. So it's just like this really interesting, really interesting way of Trump approaching the Russia problem, especially with respect to sanctions. But that also, and this leads into something we'll talk about in depth a little bit more later, Trump doesn't really bring up Russia in his State of the Union.
No,
he didn't talk about Russia at all, pretty much. And the thing about that is that, usually we talk about them, at least in, we're trying to get down to nuclear parity, or to decrease our nuclear weapons in conjunction with Russia, or we're trying to stop Russia from meddling in foreign affairs or whatever, but Trump didn't mention him at all. And so that's just, I mean, that's one in a long run of Trump's really congratulatory and complimentary of Putin and of Russia in general. But then you go to his like national security document, so his national security strategy, the national defense strategy, and the ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence Threat Assessment, and the nuclear, whatever that one's called, the nuclear threat assessment. Like all of them mention China and Russia as our top two. Like they flip the order a little bit, but like those are the top two threats according to all four of those documents. And for Trump just not to either one levy sanctions against Russia or two like call them out for what they're doing, like that speaks a lot to the fact that all four of those documents that are emanating from the White House or from organizations connected to the White House, that Trump doesn't really see eye to eye with his own policies. So that's just one more thing that's adding to that list of things. Moving on, this week, Deputy Director, FBI Director Andrew McCabe stepped down early. I guess the plan was for him to retire, and then the new FBI Director kind of asked him to step down early.
Well, before that, let me just get in real quick. It had been known that he was going to retire mid-March.
Right.
But he did, like a lot of people do this, he effectively stepped down now and took the rest of his vacation time.
Right.
To fill in the time until March. Because mid-March is when he gets, like, his full benefits and pension and all that stuff.
Right.
But he had all this leave accrued over his many years at the FBI, so he's done working, but his vacation time is filling in the gap. But yes, he's stepping down effectively.
So a lot of people are saying, like, with the there was something about the Anthony Weiner emails, like him knowing about what was like the Hillary stuff that was in those emails a month before he told Congress about it. And there's a whole lot of things, and this jumps into one other thing that we want to talk about, and there might be a couple more things to say about McCabe, but this is in connection to, there are a lot of people, especially Republicans, that are attacking the FBI because there are a whole bunch of discrepancies in the Russia investigation. So one of the top FBI officials who was involved with both the Hillary investigation and the Russia investigation into Trump's campaign. He was texting some very partisan things to his girlfriend. Was it the guy or the girl? I can't remember.
It's Peter Strzok, and I can't remember the other.
Yeah, anyway, they were texting back and forth, and they're both FBI people, but they were boyfriend and girlfriend too, so like they were texting back and forth, and
they were. No, keep going.
One of them called Trump an idiot or something, or a moron or something like that. And the girl, and I can't remember what her name is, she said something about a secret society.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just a joke, but everybody's taking it way too seriously, a secret society within the FBI. And I don't have all the details coming to mind, obviously, because I can't give you exact names or jokes or details or anything like that. But it's just been this whole thing that's like swirling around the FBI that the Republicans are trying very hard to make the FBI partisan. And the thing about the intelligence community is that they try very hard, very, very hard to step back and to keep themselves a little bit more like outside of the outside of the partisan politics. They all pride themselves on their nonpartisan ability to assess the facts and to give the facts regardless of the partisan bent. And the fact that Congress and that especially some top Republicans are trying to villainize the FBI and to turn them into this partisan body that's against the White House is really difficult. And I think I've said this before, but like the one of the biggest ideas of this is that they're attacking Mueller, who is a Republican and who has been well respected across the board prior to his involvement in this investigation. And like right now the biggest symptom of this is that the Republicans, specifically Devin Nunes, the one who was like under investigation for like talking to the White House about some things he wasn't supposed to talk to the White House about.
That guy.
So he heads the House Intelligence Committee, and now he's back in action because he's been cleared of misconduct with respects to talking to the White House and stuff. And he wrote this memo because he got like super involved in his research and was trying to figure out all of these things about what the FBI was doing and their investigation into Russia. And one of, I can't remember who it was, an ex-head of some national security structure was saying like, so Devin wrote this, no, Nunes, sorry, let me, context. Nunes wrote this memo. It's like a 4-page memo about the FBI and what they were doing with respects to the Russia investigation and why it's partisan and all of this stuff.
It's specifically about like FISA,
right,
and about wiretapping on Carter Page.
Right. So it's classified, and if you were to declassify it and to release it to the public, you could hurt the investigation, first of all. But anyway, so this ex-head of a national security complex was saying like, you know that this is like the choosiest cherry picking ever because a FISA warrant is like 40-50 pages long, and you would have had to cherry pick very carefully what was in this memo. But the conflict is, so there are 2 memos written. There's the one written by Devin Nunes, and there's one written by the Democrats on the Intelligence Committee. And the committee voted to release the Republican memo, but not the Democratic memo.
Right.
So it gets sent to the White House, and Trump can sign off on it, and the Justice Department doesn't want this release. Like, they're lobbying really hard.
I have so the Justice Department and the FBI both came out publicly against releasing the memo. The Department of Justice said it would be extraordinarily reckless to do that. And the FBI said it had grave concerns about this memo being released. Like, and you have to understand, like, the FBI doesn't make public statements like this very often. It's super rare. So for them to come out and say that them as the organization and the head of the FBI, Trump's handpicked person, mind you, comes out and says that they have grave concerns and that it would undermine the FISA process and the FBI's counterintelligence work and all that stuff, and yet the Republicans are just like, yeah, sure, it's fine, release it.
Right.
It proves that it's corrupt and we need to change and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, ugh.
Yeah, this is one of the biggest problems with like the complete radicalization of some of these committees, is that we're treading into dangerous waters where we can't walk it back. So FBI has always been nonpartisan. Justice Department has always been nonpartisan, even though it's been headed by partisan people, right? Like, this is their role, is to step back from everything that's going on and to kind of defend the laws of this nation. Like, they are answered to the law and not to the administration or to Congress. And so, I mean, you know what I mean, within reason. But they answer to the law. And the other thing that's really interesting about this is that Democrat Richard Schiff, who is Nunes's counterpart in that he's like the minority leader of the ranking member in the Intelligence Committee. He said that after the committee voted to release this memo, which was definitely a partisan vote, Nunes changed some critical things, so it's not the same memo. So the memo that got sent to the White House is not the same memo that the committee voted on, and therefore they should be voting again. But it really is along party lines, and we are doing the thing that we're doing with the FBI and with these investigations, and in some respects the FBI kind of brought this on themselves, but not really. Like, to have the Congress to go after them this way is really damaging their ability to stay out of politics and to judge fairly and nonpartisanly. So that could become very dangerous in the future.
So this leads into the State of the Union. As Trump was leaving the chamber, one of the Republican lawmakers, I don't know which one.
No, they haven't said of his name.
Said, like, release the memo. And Trump said on camera, like, you can watch the video, he says, oh yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
So, like, there's no question about where Trump stands on this. It's just a matter of if his, like, Justice Department, FBI, and advisors
Can walk him back
from it.
Right. Because, I mean, he's been set on courses like this before. I mean, with firing Mueller.
Yeah.
But we've walked him back from those.
So speaking of State of the Union, that was this week on Tuesday. It was Trump's first official State of the Union, but not his first joint address to Congress. Right. That was last week. Because you can't technically air last year. Feels like.
It feels like last week?
Feels like last week.
Actually, it feels like 10 years ago.
Yeah, it does. Because in the president's first official year, it's not technically called a State of the Union because they've only been in for like less than a month, so they don't know the quote State of the Union. But they're traditionally invited to give a joint address to Congress, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so this is called technically his first State of the Union. If you've seen wording about it, that's why. And there were a lot of guests in the First Lady's box. Right. Well, a lot of stories. Mm-hmm. Where do you want to start?
Well, I want to start with how long it was.
Okay, yeah.
So it was really an hour and 20-ish minutes. It's the third longest State of the Union, right behind two of Bill Clinton's State of the Unions. And then I was hearing some stats that were saying that, like, his speech, Donald Trump's speech, had, like, 5,500 words, which is half as long as Bill Clinton's longest speech. He just speaks really slowly. He was just speaking really slowly, which dragged it out. So he had about half the amount of words as Clinton's longest speech. He spoke for in that hour and 20 minutes, only about 20 minutes were spent on foreign policy matters. Most of it was spent on domestic matters, and about half of that was spent on economic matters. Because that's the one big, like, that's one of the big triumphs that Trump is attempting to claim and to some extent can claim this year is the economy and the fact that it's booming and the tax cuts, right? So he spends a long time going over that. But Stu's right. They did have a lot of guests, and he played to that for a man who tends to focus back on himself a lot. He turned the narrative and was telling stories of other people a whole lot more than he was talking about himself this speech, which was really interesting.
Some notable highlights. There's a policeman and his wife who adopted a baby from an opioid-addicted mother. Yep. There was Otto Warmbier, however you say their last name. His parents were there. He was the UVA student who went to North Korea, came back in a coma, and died.
His siblings were also there.
Oh, very nice.
It was his whole family.
I didn't see that.
They didn't actually show his siblings on camera. They just said that they were there. I'm pretty sure they were standing right behind their parents.
That makes sense. There were parents of two teenage girls killed by MS-13 gang members. And I think the most interesting one was a man. I'm going to look up his name. He is a defector from North Korea.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, he has the most remarkable story. His name is Ji Sung-ho. He doesn't have an arm, or he has lost one of his arms and one of his legs.
Left arm and leg.
And he, like, held up the crutches that he had, like, used, and it was, like, a really triumphal moment for him. He had the New York Times did an awesome story on him. Go read it. But basically, like, he was operated on without any anesthesia, and he said he could, like, feel his spine, like rattling while they were, like, operating on him, and, like, it's a really gruesome story, but now he
lost his arm and leg when he fainted from a lack of food. Like, he was so hungry, and he was out foraging for food for his family, and he fainted on a railroad track and woke up as the train was running over him.
Yeah.
Right, and so then he lost his arm and leg.
Then they operated on him without any anesthesia, and he was wide awake, and that's just, And he eventually made it out with his brother. His mom and sister came, but his dad died somewhere along the journey trying to get out.
And he'd been tortured because he went to China for a couple of operations.
Yeah. It's like...
And met Christians. Like, Trump made this, like, point that's the point where he met Christians, and then he wanted to be free of his administration, which is this, like, subtle line, and it was a one-liner, but it was kind of important. So he met Christians, and then he wanted to be free, and then they escaped, and he brought his family with him. And now he's got a new prosthetic, but he carries around his crutches as a memory of of all that he went through, and he I think he had one of, I don't know if it was the longest standing ovation, but he had one of the longest, and he is holding up these crutches and kind of victory punching them.
It's a pretty remarkable story.
Is.
I heard parts of it, and then I went and looked it up, and I was like, holy cow, that is... And I've read a handful of North Korean defector stories recently, and this one was by far the most riveting and just remarkable story. So if you're interested in that, go look it up.
Yeah. So Trump spent, like I said, he spent a good time on economy, and then he moved to immigration, and he spent a lot of time on immigration. So the MS-13 gang that Stu mentioned earlier, is mostly made up is something that Trump rails on a lot, because he talks about it in terms of illegal immigration, because a lot of members of that gang are illegal immigrants, and they tend to be more violent because they're part of this gang, and that's how they find a community. And so for him, this is one of those moments where he's cementing in people's minds through these parents who I marvel at their strength, because they're there and they've lost their daughters. It was September of 2016. And they've lost their daughters, and they're there, and they are, you can tell that this is emotionally traumatizing for them because they're crying. But he's using this narrative to say that, oh, all illegal immigrants are bad people, and we should be increasing skilled working immigration. And so he sets up his 4 pillars for immigration, which is basically his idea for a deal on immigration. And we'll see where that ends up, because Congress has just one more week to really get anything done, because this week was this week was State of the Union for the first half, and now the GOP is headed out of town for their annual policy conference. So there's that. I mean, he talks about how one of the most memorable lines is he said that all Americans are dreamers, which just made everybody cringe who wasn't his, a lot of people cringe, just because he's, by using that term, by saying all Americans are dreamers, he's not, and he never called out the DACA dreamers ever, right? He didn't specifically refer to them at all. And so by using the term all Americans are dreamers, by using this very powerful sentence, and it's actually genius on the part of his speechwriter, he's turning the narrative now, and he is kind of what is the word I'm trying to use? He's diminutizing the plight of the dreamers in some ways. And then he's talking about Guantanamo Bay staying open and possibly sending new prisoners there. So Obama didn't send any prisoners there. It was still open, obviously, but he'd been slowly leaving or letting people out that were never charged with anything. There are only 40 prisoners there now. Trump's talking about the possibility of sending prisoners back there. And his argument on that is that we need to be holding terrorists that are proven to be terrorists, because if we had held Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi when we had him after Saddam's fall in a prison, then there wouldn't be ISIS. The thing that he forgets to mention is that the reason that Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi really became super radicalized against the United States and went on to form ISIS is because of the way we treated them in those prisons, not because we didn't keep him in the prison. So, there were a couple of other things, he talked about only trading with allies, which is dangerous in the mind of all of those of us who believe that bigger trading ties lead to less conflict. In some ways, I mean, it was a very good speech in some ways. Trump was able to stay on message, and he was able to kind of keep track of things and really paint a message of nationalism. And he tried to paint a picture of unity, but that didn't work out so well for him. I mean, it was a pretty good speech on the whole. And for Trump, it's not by any stretch of the imagination a good speech for any other person. But he did do a pretty good job, and he managed to weave a narrative using these people in Melania's box really rather well. So, also, Melania showed up in a separate car from him to the State of the Union.
There've been a lot of questions surrounding their relationship lately.
Right now, right? Well,
especially after the Stormy Daniels thing came out, which
she didn't go to Davos with him.
Which is a whole story we haven't even been able to get to because of all the other crazy
Right.
stuff that's happened.
But the rumors are that Melania is super upset with him because of this story. And she, usually the First Lady and the President show up together in the same car, and she showed up to the State of the Union in a separate car from him. So.
All right. Anything else on the State of the Union? I think we pretty much hashed it.
I think so.
All right. Well, that ends our politics section. We shall now move on to our soapbox, and this week we will be discussing Harry Potter 5, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, because I finished it this week. And woo, Bessie, that's a big book.
Yeah, it is.
870 pages. Basically, I, got so attached to Sirius, and then it was just compounded even worse, knowing the fact that, I knew he died at the end.
Yeah.
And so, all the moments of him and Harry together was just, all the more painful, and the movie doesn't show it as much, but him and Harry, spend a lot of time together, just at his house before Harry goes to Hogwarts and things. And, at the very end, after Sirius dies, Harry finds the two-way mirror that Sirius had given him, and it's all that, trying to get into Umbridge's office to use her fireplace would have, totally gone away if he had just, opened his bag and saw the two-way mirror. He could have chatted with Sirius every night if he wanted to. And it's just oh, Sirius! And also, it was helped, my love of Sirius is also helped by the fact that he's played by Gary Oldman in the movies, and Gary Oldman is just a fabulous actor. So, that was my biggest overall impression, was just oh, Sirius.
Yeah, because they have a lot of, tender moments where, Sirius tells him the story of, he's staring at the family tree, and Sirius tells him the story of being burned out of the family tree, and all of those kinds of things.
Some other little things. I wish in the movie they would have shown, so, the very end of the book, the Order, it's obviously the Dursleys coming to the train station picking up Harry. And the members of the Order, threaten the Dursleys if they do anything to Harry. They're just so funny, because Mad Eye is, going at it with Vernon, and Vernon's do I look like the kind of man that could be intimidated? And Mad Eye's yeah, you do. It's just so funny. One more thing, and Emily might pitch in, is the whole prophecy was kind of a letdown. The whole book and the whole year they build up the prophecy to be this big thing, and then at the end when you find out what it is, you're that's it? That's the weapon?
To me, I was kind of well, duh. Obviously they're gonna have to, one of them's gonna kill the other.
Yeah.
It kind of just solidified what we were all thinking, and it wasn't this huge new thing. I don't know. I felt like it was kind of it was a little overbuilt up.
Right. But then you have that, you get into it, is it in Half-Blood Prince, where you kind of get into this idea where it could have been Neville?
Yeah.
Which is interesting, but it's not
That's not, plot sensitive, right?
Plot central, yeah, it's not central to the plot, or
who else was born of parents who were both involved in the Order and at the end in July, so
it's interesting, it could have been Neville, but it's not, you're right, it's not central to the plot. So the whole fact that they're build it up and da 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 da, it's that's it, that's what, and
he drops it.
Yeah. Luckily, Dumbledore had memory of it, but
it's Dumbledore's memory. He was there.
So, all in all, I enjoyed the 5th book. It was good, and it was another stop in my journey along the way, and I'll just keep chugging along. So,
good deal.
Those are my final thoughts on that.
Excellent. Also, in the vein of finishing things, you finished West Wing this week.
I did. I could go on and on. I'll make this really brief, but yes, I finished the TV series The West Wing, which is 7 seasons, and I've been working on it for a long time, and I feel like my friends have died. I've been through a lot with these people.
Yeah.
It was very good, and I was like freaking out the whole time and like live texting it to my friend who also has watched it and like, oh my gosh, like it just the biggest and most exciting part, and if you haven't watched The West Wing and you want to, this is a spoiler.
This is where you should end the podcast.
Yes. You are warned. But when Bartlett is like toying with Toby's pardon, and it's just like there on his desk, and you're like, is he gonna do it? Is he gonna do it? And like the whole time I was like rocking back and forth, and then like when he signed it, I was like, he signed it. Like, oh, like I was happy. It was just like, oh, I know like how much he doesn't want to do it, but like he did it, and it was just like, oh, that's
I never
so
liked
awesome.
that storyline. The whole Toby
The
spilling,
leak thing.
yeah, the leak. I never liked that storyline.
Yeah, they kind of threw away the character of Toby the last season. Like,
I never liked
Toby was such an integral part and awesome for the first 6 seasons, and then like the last season they just kind of throw him away.
Yeah.
So that was sad. But I do feel good inside that he was pardoned.
Yeah.
But they don't show Toby's reaction. You don't know how Toby reacted to the news. You know how CJ reacted, the president, like Will, Charlie, like all these people, but you don't know how Toby responds. It's like, ow! I tried tweeting at Richard Schiff today, asking him. Of course, he didn't respond, but I was like, hey, it's worth a shot.
Your Twitter is private. That's probably also why.
Dang it.
He can't see it.
He can't? Even if you tweet at people?
If they're not following you. Usually they won't.
Well, then I'm stupid. I'm gonna have to become unprivate just to tweet at Richard Schiff. Well,
worth it.
Thank you for revealing my stupidity. On that
Sorry.
note, we can end. Have a great week, and we'll be here next time.
Yeah, we will.